It is the story of a clown who was once the premier clown, who is no more the top clown, and who is having a difficult time
What really happened, no one knows.
Can you do fiction about the Holocaust? Yes, I think you can.
You will see wonderful things happen to a human being because some things happen that make him think about others besides himself, and that's all I'm going to tell you.
Hello. I've been a comedian for many years and a Jew for even longer. As a child of a Holocaust survivor, my mother fled from Vienna in 1938 with her playwright father and actress mother. The Holocaust has always been something I've been very aware of. Now, I can already feel some of you thinking, oh, the Holocaust, what's on the other side? But stay with us, because as a comedian, I've always wondered, can you actually do comedy about this most difficult and taboo subject? Like, I'll give you an example. When I used to compare Jewish gigs, I once received a piece of paper backstage, and on it was written, "We are a busload of concentration camp survivors. Can you say hello to us during the gig?" And it just made me think, well, what am I meant to say? Go out and say, "Hello, anyone in from Auschwitz?" Now, I don't know if you found that story uncomfortable or wrong, or if you laughed, maybe all of that. But I've always been interested in that complex area of comedy where these feelings meet. And I'm not alone. A lot of Jewish comedians have found themselves exploring this area just because it's so central to their identity. And one of the most remarkable examples of someone who tried this was Jerry Lewis. Jerry Lewis shot to fame with his legendary double act opposite Dean Martin.
My first guest became an international star by tripping over himself. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Jerry Lewis! You met Dean Martin. How come the two of you teamed up? After all, he's a crooner.
Well, he was out of work and he needed some help. So I put him on for 10 years and then I had to let him go.
This got him into films, and in the 60s he became a worldwide superstar, thanks to leading roles in family comedies. He eventually worked behind the cameras as well.
Now, where did you get your training? Because you went on, you see, to not only do your own stuff, but you wrote and you produced and you directed it as well. So where did you get the training for that?
From my crew. Then I wound up getting 8 Best Director of the Year awards in Europe, 1 here in England.
Your own people don't estimate you, or haven't really given you the kind of accolades that perhaps you deserve and that the French have given you.
Well, the Americans have no taste. We know that.
Then in the early 70s, Lewis embarked on a completely different style of project. Here's some rare footage of him arriving in Stockholm in traditional goofy Jerry Lewis style to scout locations for his new film, The Day the Clown Cried. It was a story a million miles away from the nutty professor. Lewis was to play a clown arrested in Nazi Germany during World War II for drunkenly defaming Hitler. His character's then thrown into a concentration camp where he's beaten and forced to lead children into gas chambers. So, not a comedy then.
They have everything I need here for this film, and for the 10 years that I have been living with this project, I have never found the right place to shoot it.
The film was shot mainly in Sweden, and if you think you've seen it, then, well, you're either a liar or you're Jerry Lewis. Well done. Because the film has never been released. There are a few different copies of the script available online, which each purport to be the material used in the film, and it's often cited by movie historians as one of the most wanted unseen films of all time.
Where do I start? This is an interesting lost film because no one, very, very few people have really seen anything from it. This is his most serious film ever. He certainly decided to do something different.
Over the years, a few photos have appeared, but the air of mystery surrounding the production has created a massive following online, with groups knocking around in various corners of the internet discussing theories about the film. Some fans have even attempted to act out the entire movie.
I read the screenplays and I was amazed. I thought, wow, this is actually pretty good. And it just evolved from there. And I thought, if we're not going to be able to see this thing, the least I could do is try to reenact it.
The thing that interests me about this production is, what exactly was the artistic interpretation and direction for Jerry Lewis when approaching this sensitive subject? It's suggested by many that this started out as a straight drama, but gradually evolved so that Lewis even attempted to introduce some moments of comedy into the picture. For instance, the main character's name was seemingly changed from Carl Schmidt to Helmut Dork. Yes, Dork. It's also possible that Lewis was trying to recreate the comedic magic of Chaplin's Great Dictator. Of course, Jews caught up in the Holocaust themselves would use humour and tell jokes. Here's an example of a joke from that era that I heard. So a Jewish guy is walking down a country lane during the war, and Hitler drives past in his car, and he pulls up, and he gets out, and he points a pistol at the Jew and says, "I want you to eat that cow pat." So the Jew has to get down on the floor, on the ground, and eat the cow pat. And Hitler laughs so much that he drops his gun. The Jew grabs it, points the gun at Hitler, and says, "Right, now you eat from the cow pat." So Hitler gets down, he has to eat from the cow pat. The Jew then goes home, walks home to his wife, and his wife says, "What sort of day have you had?" And the Jew says, "Oh, it was all right." "Oh, you never guess who I had lunch with?"
Comedy is our safety valve. Without it, I think we would disappear, evaporate. I don't think a man could work. I don't think that a family can function. I don't think that humanity could prevail without laughter.
And I always felt that there were countless examples of great, dark, serious performances and dark work by comedians. There is a certain touch to it, and certainly this film must have a lot of that.
As you can imagine, there's always been a lot of interest in the movie. The Swedish Film Institute has heard many stories surrounding the production.
When I was a teenager, I remember I read so many articles about it in the daily papers, and I was very curious about it since I was a big fan of Jerry Lewis. In the 70s, he's The Nutty Professor. I believe it was made in 1964, and even in the 70s, you could still see it on Swedish cinema almost every year. So when he was in this kind of, as I thought it was an American-Swedish movie, I thought this will be extremely interesting. I remember I saw Jerry Lewis in prisoner costumes, and he looked sad on all the pictures. This was at a time when I started to get really, really interested.
The archives of the Swedish Film Institute hold some rare treasures connected directly to the making of the film.
This is donated from the still photographer of the movie, Roger Tilburg. And it starts with a letter from Jerry Lewis, here you can see, and from 1972. And then you can also find shooting schedules and also address lists to all the members of the team, to all the actors and actresses. And then you have a lot of negative of the stills from the film.
So I'm very excited now because I'm about to see something that no one has really seen before, which is pictures of the actual film, so some visuals from the film. So let's have a look. Yeah, it's just very iconic, isn't it, those outfits. It just doesn't seem like a comedy just in that background. You realise just how powerful the potential is to go wrong as well as to do it brilliantly. And this shot's just very effective because there you have a Jewish-looking guy with a beard that seems very identical to mine, telling a Nazi exactly what he should be doing. So the symbolism is so strong. It's a big two fingers stuck up to Hitler as well and to Nazism, because here is a Jewish director making a film, or trying to make a film, about the Holocaust and the ravages of Nazism. Who could look at these pictures and not want to see the film What's most scary but also most exciting is when you look at a picture and it just looks like it's taken from the Holocaust itself, and you just realise how easy it is to get things wrong. If you got it right, just how strong would that be? I mean, this material, because it's so on the edge, because it's so taboo, is so dangerous. But that's where you want to go as an artist, but as a comedian as well. You want to go right to the edge to see if it's still funny, to see if you can say things in that way. I mean, there's a whole difficult area of whether he has the right to keep, once a thing is made, whether he has the right to not allow it out there. But I think when you look at these pictures and you realise just how badly it could go, how offensive it could be, then he's probably done the right thing to say, don't put that out there. So I'm torn because I want to see the picture, but on the other hand, I sort of respect him for thinking, no, it's not right, it's not worked, I need to lock it away. I mean, it is a surprise to see the nutty professor making a film like this, but in another way it isn't. I mean, I know comedians, I know nutty comedians, and I can sort of understand that Jerry Lewis would want to be seen as more than just this crazy guy who did slapstick and silly voices, and had this urge to make a statement in the biggest way possible about his identity and his Jewish identity. What's amazing about this picture with Hitler is that it puts Jerry Lewis in a long tradition of your Mel Brooks, what have you, these people, Jews, who stick two fingers up at Hitler. There's the sort of cigarette stuck up Hitler's nose. This is sort of emblematic of what Jerry Lewis is trying to do, I imagine, to say, I'm still here as a Jew and I'm commenting on you. Hitler still defines us. He defines me as the son of a Holocaust survivor. And it's great to turn that definition into a, if you'll pardon my German, a fuck you.
My philosophy of comedy is a man in trouble. There, but for the grace of God, go I.
So how careful do you have to be when making a film about the Holocaust? Should a comedian ever try and make one? Can you have a fictional story set within the framework of such a sensitive period of history? The Parkes Institute at the University of Southampton is world-renowned for its study of Jewish and non-Jewish relations, and Dr. Devorah Baum is a lecturer in English literature and critical theory with a special interest in Jewish literature.
With humour, there's always a couple of questions you have to ask, or with comedy anyway. One of them is, what are we laughing at? And one of them is, who are we laughing with? So, there's a long tradition of humour in relationship to the Holocaust. But if you're laughing along with Charlie Chaplin or with Mel Brooks at Hitler, fine. If you're laughing at Hitler's victims, not so much. So it's an area where we're very used to actually having quite a lot of fun and a lot of comedy, but it depends always who the butt of the joke is.
What Jerry Lewis tried to do is to take a taboo area that we all try and repress and bring it out there. But whether you can do that if you're not actually, well, he's Jewish, so he has a certain right, but he's not been through that experience. Do you have the right? I don't know. It's like the classic, I can tell Jewish jokes, but others maybe can't, non-Jews maybe can't tell Jewish jokes. We have the right to tell jokes about our own experience.
Right.
But
being in a place where they can say whatever they want is, I think, something comedians dream of the entire time. Most comedians I know are obsessed with what they're not allowed to say and wondering if they can find a way. My suspicion with Jerry Lewis perhaps is that whilst perhaps he thought he was interested in what this history meant for him personally, it might well have been that the personal story there was that at some level he sees all comedians as clowns standing before gas chambers, or as that comedy is always somehow an attempt to laugh at that moment of the unspeakable, and so maybe then, the more personal it began to be for him, perhaps the more he felt illegitimate in front of this particular stage, or who knows?
Or maybe it's the closer he got to realising he was going to have to put it out there, the more frightened he became.
I mean, it could be he just looked at the rushes and they weren't.
It was just a rubbish film.
Actually, this wasn't such a great idea.
He forgot his lines the whole time.
But my sense is that something like that happened, that he thought it was a good idea, and it slowly dawned on him that this is much larger than perhaps he'd realised.
Dr. James Jordan is an expert in the representation of Jewish themes in culture.
What's interesting about the clips we have, or the photographs we have of the Lewis film, is that the ending, you have the children behind the barbed wire, and you have a sense of him trying to rescue these children. But what that recalls for me more than anything else is the Soviet images of liberation of Auschwitz, where you see the children coming up to the barbed wire, showing their tattoos. So what I think also Lewis is doing is he's using that visual register and saying that this is a similarity, and there is something realistic about this. It doesn't capture the horror of the sounds, the smells, the dirt, that's not there, but there is something recognisably realistic about it.
It's interesting because we're presuming that he was bringing comedy to it, but we don't know because we've not seen it. But also, why would he? He happens to be a comedian, but maybe he approached it in a way that this is not a comedy place.
That's true.
You know, we don't know, do we?
No, we don't, no. I think the strength of what we have, and this is going to sound terrible, is that we don't have the dialogue, but what we have from the stills is a sense of almost a silent movie. And we can impose on that the story that we want, and that makes it more emotional, more romantic, and more of a canvas which we can imagine. And I'd like to think that the film is good. I have that optimism that there is a good film there, but precisely because I haven't seen it rather than anything else.
I mean, I think there's two ways to approach it, the Holocaust, in the same way as there were two, broadly speaking, types of survivors. There was a survivor that never wanted to talk about it again, and the survivor that only wanted to talk about it. In art, you know, we're talking about art in general, you know, there's sort of some people who feel you should never go there. For comedy, you should never go there. Yeah. And then others, Mel Brooks, and at some level myself as well, not that I'm on the par with Mel Brooks, but I maybe am in that obsession with the Holocaust. If I could make a career out of it, I probably would only do stuff about the Holocaust. But so it's like, I think that's why I wonder. You know, we're filling the void of what we know with Jerry Lewis. But I wonder if he just, you know, it was in the 70s. He was out in America, but it was like, you know, you feel that. Yeah, I'm gooning around, I'm being funny, but really, I want to talk about the Holocaust.
There is a sense, I think, that he is a serious man trapped inside a comedian's body.
Yeah.
And no offence, obviously.
No. We arranged interviews with 4 members of the cast. All were happy to speak to us. Then, just before the recording was due to take place, they all mysteriously pulled out. However, we were able to talk to one of the actors, Lars Amble, who played one of the key roles. He was the chief Nazi guard and gave us this rare radio interview shortly before his death.
He called me up. He was staying here in Stockholm in a hotel, and he asked me, "Do you speak a little English?" And I told him I don't speak very well, but he said, that's the meaning of it. You should sound like a German who couldn't speak English. My part was a very mean guy, a German Nazi officer, head of the barracks H, where all the prisoners were, and among them Jerry, of course. He was very well prepared for each scene that we should take. He knew exactly where he wanted the camera to be, what he wanted the actors to do, and he was very professional. He gave all of us confidence. He was a very nice guy. He knew exactly how a foreign actor would feel in a new situation like this was. You know, I don't know why he didn't release the film, and I never saw it, not even rough cuts. I got a letter from the company just telling me that the film shouldn't be released. So I just, after a couple of months, I didn't think about it anymore. I mean, we got our money and everything, but I don't know. No, I just forgot about it.
One of the other leading roles in the movie was taken by Swedish star Harriet Anderson, famous for her many roles in Bergman films. Jan Lumholt wrote a book with her about her career in the film industry. He remembers her stories of working on the production.
Oh, I don't remember anything, I think, was the first thing she said. And then she said that I'm still waiting for my paycheck. And I think we did a session, and I think 2 weeks later or something, it's another encounter, I asked her if she had any more recollections. So I got a little more out of her, but she said, okay, my part isn't that great. I take it they chose me because they wanted a kind of a name actress from Sweden because of the Swedish involvement in the production. She told me about him being not a very pleasant man to work under. And being a little bit erratic and aloof at some times as well. And she also mentioned that he had some back problems and took some painkillers and became a little strange. And but she also mentioned that the sets were absolutely fantastic, very, very impressive. But then they decided that it was not going to be released, and there are still some people waiting for their paychecks. Some of them are gone now, so that's kind of taken care of. But if anyone sees this and remembers Harriet, she would be very happy to get a little check, I think.
Because of the image you portray, the manic, hysterical character.
Who?
No,
me?
No, not you.
Not me.
But because of that
Get on with it.
You're my fun. What I mean is you slipped in there. But people expect you to behave like that in real life.
And I will not do it for you or anyone else.
You're too proud, aren't you?
Eric is the son of Jack Kotschack, one of the producers of the film. He remembers very clearly when his father was working on the movie.
I know that he was very thrilled to do this. In the beginning it was not, but then they made a decision to just shoot the scenes from the concentration camp at Sweden. My father was the guy who made it possible. He knew all the people around who made film in Sweden at that time. He was a celebrity. It was a big story for the newspaper and the radio and the television at that time when he came to Sweden. All day he ate salmon, and my mother made. And another thing, he just, it's a special thing, but he threw his underwears and socks away. He didn't use it anymore. He threw it away. That was the thing I remember. That he was a bit. I met him once, and he was a person who take the room in possession, and he was a big character and a big actor.
With everyone seemingly excited about the project, what actually happened that indicated things weren't going to plan and the film would not be released?
The problem more occurred afterwards when the truth came that the money hasn't came up to the actor.
At the end of shooting the scenes in Sweden, it was sadly obvious that his father was no longer friends with Lewis.
They were close before, but not after. And what really happened, no one knows, really. He sent a telegram, so that telegram was to the smallest man in town, from Jerry Lewis to Jack Kotschack. So they had a clinch. They were, in the beginning, best of friends to make the film, and in the end, not so good friends at all.
So what does the Jewish community in Sweden think about a film featuring concentration camps being filmed in its country?
It's kind of ironic. I mean, Sweden was basically the only country that didn't have any concentration camps. It wasn't occupied, nobody was deported, but maybe that's what he was interested in. Maybe he wanted a neutral ground.
But what about that difficult issue? Is it right to have a fictional film set in this dark period in history?
Well, that's a discussion that comes up on a regular basis. Can you do fiction about the Holocaust? My personal opinion is yes, I think you can, because we need different ways and different aspects of understanding the complexity of the Holocaust in fiction. I think you have to be careful, and I think you have to be very clear that it's fiction. But I think it can be fiction in one way, but it doesn't mean that the framework is fiction. You can use fictional characters in a real environment. It doesn't make it any less true.
The big question is, will we ever get to see this picture?
Jerry Lewis took the film with him to America, the physical film, for the last 3 days of recording the film. So, yeah, he took it with him.
I went to a press conference in Cannes and I asked him about it. I felt it was my duty.
Are we going to get to see The Day the Clown Cried?
No. No. You want to know why? Yeah. Simply because it's very easy to sit in front of an audience and expound on your feelings. It's another thing to have to deal with those feelings. And in terms of that film, I was embarrassed. I was ashamed of the work, and I was grateful that I had the power to contain it all and never let anybody see it. It was bad, bad, bad. It could have been wonderful, but I slipped up. I didn't quite get it, and I didn't quite have enough sense to find out why I'm doing it, and maybe there would be an answer.
Recently, Jerry donated his film collection to the Library of Congress in Washington, and this included his copy of The Day the Clown Cried, under the French title Le jour où le clown pleura. It's been reported that he has let them have these reels on the understanding they won't be shown to anyone until at least 2025. Of course, if the film does get released and the internet's anything to go by, there'll be a huge line of people queuing up to see it. Either way, it'll be some time before this becomes a reality.
It'll never be seen. Sorry. I'll tell you how it ends.